The image depicts a comparison between food pyramids in 1970s and 2010s. The left one has 4 layers and the right one has 3 layers. We can see wine bottle on the top of the pyramid in 1970s, and rice in a blue bowl on the top of the pyramid in 2010s. Then meat is in the second layer in both 1970s and 2010s. Fruits are in the bottom layer in 2010s. In conclusion, the picture compares food pyramids in different decades. This picture shows us plastic recycling. The first stage starts with plastic bottles thrown into rubbish bins. Once this is completed, the subsequent step is to collect rubbish with a cart. After that, all the plastic bottles are crushed by shredding machine. Then they are taken away by a conveyor belt to be washed. The following steps are melting, extrusion and pelletizing. The process concludes with the final output of granules. The primary focus of the image appears to be hydrological cycle. At the center of the image, there are runoff, evaporation, lakes and rivers. The image features several prominent elements, including the sun, clouds, mountains, seawater, and so on. One of the main objects in the picture is the sun, which is high in the upper right corner. In the background, there is a blue sky, in which there are a lot of white clouds. In this section of the image, it is clear that evaporation above the sea, condensation in the air, precipitation, and rivers make a completer hydrological cycle. In conclusion, the image effectively illustrates how water goes through a hydrological cycle. The following map gives information about the distribution of harlequin ladybird in England. The red dots indicate positions of the birds in 2004, and the black dots indicate those in 2005. We can see in 2004 the birds mainly lived in the east part of England, near North Sea. We can also see the number of the birds decreased in 2005. And only a very small part of the birds lived inland. In conclusion, the map is very informative. The following line chart gives information about ownerships of cell phone and smartphone in the US. From the line chart we can see in 2005, about 62% of adults owned a cell phone. In 2010, about 35% of adults owned a smartphone, and 80% owned a cell phone. In 2020, about 80% owned a smartphone and 96% owned a cell phone. In conclusion, the gap between the ownerships of smartphone and cell phone is decreasing. This pie chart gives information about pet ownership by region. From the picture we can see for Asia the share is 15%. For Europe the share is higher, which is 25%. The highest share is for North America, which is 40%. And the lowest share is for Africa or Oceania, which is 5%. There is another continent, South America. In conclusion, this pie chart is very informative. The following picture gives information of a sakura tree. In the lower right corner, there is a thick tree trunk, on which some green leaves grow. From the trunk, a few branches stretch across the picture, one of which stretches to the upper left corner. From the picture we can see a lot of twigs stretching from those branches. On the twigs, there are a lot of sakura flowers in blossom, whose color is pink. On the background, we can see a blue, sunny sky. In conclusion, this picture is beautiful and informative. The following picture gives information about best food for brain health. According to the picture, there is a red brain on the left side, in which there is a lot of junk food. The junk food includes potato chips, popsicle, wine, and hamburger. There is a nearly empty battery below the red brain. There is a blue brain on the right side, in which there is a lot of healthy food. The healthy food includes vegetables and fruits. In conclusion, we should change bad habits and boost our brain power. The following graph gives information about working hours in Germany. The horizontal axis is year, ranging from 1970 to 2017. According to this graph, in the year of 1970, the value is around 1,900. And according to this graph, in the year of 1975, the value is around 1,800. The lowest value is around 1,300, which is in 2017. On the contrary, the second lowest value is 1,370, which is in 2010. In conclusion, if this trend continues, working hours will be lower in the future. The following graph gives information about flu vaccination rates. The items include South Korea, UK, and USA. According to this graph, in USA, the value of vaccination rate is around 68%, and that of UK is higher, which is around 72%. You can see from this graph that the highest value is in South Korea, which is 85. You can also see from this graph that the lowest value is in Turkey. In conclusion, flu vaccination rates vary greatly. The following graph gives information about the view of a street in fog. This is a very beautiful picture, and it shows a number of things. According to this graph, at the central area, there are 3 bicycles ridden by women at the front. The color of them is black. You can see from this graph that, behind the bicycles, there is a thick blanket of fog covering a lot of people and street lights. The color of the fog is white. You can see from this graph that, at the background, there are 4 straight dashed lines on the road surface. The color of those is white. The weather is foggy. The sky is gray. In conclusion, this picture is very informative. The following graph gives information about pounds of chocolate consumed per capita in countries each year. The items include Switzerland, Germany, Ireland, Norway, etc. According to this graph, in Sweden, the value is 11.9, and that of Australia is lower, which is around 10.8. You can see from this graph that the highest value is in Switzerland, which is 19.8. You can also see from this graph that the lowest value is in France. In conclusion, Switzerland consumes more chocolate than any another country does. The following graph gives information about percentages by age and sex. The items include age groups, female and male. According to this graph, in male, the value of 85 plus is around 0.7, and that of 75 to 84 is higher, which is around 3. You can see from this graph that the highest value of female is in 25 to 34, which is 16.5. You can also see from this graph that the value of less than 4 is 7.8. In conclusion, 85 plus has the lowest percentage of population in female. The following graph gives information about the percentages of an unknown metric across 4 countries from 1995 to 2010. This is a line graph showing trends for Sweden, France, Denmark, and Germany over the years. According to this graph, Denmark had the highest percentage in 1995, with a significant decline, reaching the lowest value of around 10% by 2010. You can see from this graph that Germany also experienced a sharp drop, reaching its lowest point at 5% in 2007, followed by a slight increase in 2010. Sweden and France show relatively stable trends, with Sweden maintaining around 27% after 2004, and France hovering between 23% and 24% during the same period. In conclusion, this graph shows a downward trend for all countries, though Sweden and France exhibit more stability compared to Denmark and Germany. The following graph gives information about average weekly household expenditure. According to this graph, the items include food, medical, transport, and holidays. You can see from this graph that the value of food is 123. And the value of medical care is 50. The value of transport is 124. According to this graph, the value of holiday is 33. As you can also see that the value of housing is 164. In conclusion, this graph is very informative. The following graph gives information about volunteer work. The items include male and female. The horizontal axis is year, ranging from 1990 to 2004. According to this graph, in 1990, the value of male is around 26, the same as female. According to this graph, the highest value of male is 45, which is in 2004. According to this graph, the value of male is higher than female, and the highest value of female is 30. In conclusion, there is a gap between male and female on volunteer work. The following graph gives information about fast food times a week. The items include every day, once a week, and never. According to this graph, in several times a week, the value of July 2003 is around 17%, and that of 2013 is lower, which is around 16%. You can see from this graph that the highest value of December 2006 is in about once a week, around 33%. You can also see from this graph that the lowest value of July 2013 is in every day, around 3%. In conclusion, Americans usually eat fast food. The following graph gives information about fast food consumption by meal. The items include breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snack. According to this graph, in breakfast, the value is around 22.7%, and that of snack is lower, which is around 22.6%. You can see from this graph that the highest value of lunch is 43.7. You can also see from this graph that the second highest value of dinner is 42%. In conclusion, fast food consumption has 4 kinds. The following graph gives information about plastic bottle recycling. The steps include new bottles, refilling, used bottles and plastic processing, and, according to this graph, the first step is newly produced bottles, which are empty. According to this graph, the second step is to fill the empty bottles with beverage. You can see from this graph that the third step is to open the bottles and drink up it, followed by the fourth step is to transport used bottles back to the factory and use them as materials. The final step is the plastic materials turn into new bottles waiting for refilling. In conclusion, this graph is very informative. The following graph gives information about how tomatoes come to consumers. The steps include a tomato tree, transportation, filtering, packaging. According to this graph, the first step is the tomato tree, which grows many tomatoes on the branches. According to this graph, the second step is to transport tomatoes by a blue truck. You can see from this graph that the third step is to filter bad tomatoes out on a conveyor belt, followed by a crate full of good tomatoes as the fourth step. The final step is to fill the shopping cart with the good tomatoes for consumers. In conclusion, this graph is very informative.